Ted Dabrowski, thank you for joining us again on the Illinois Channel, and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you too, and I'm glad to be here.
We wanted to follow up with you as we close out 2019. We closed out the first year of the Pritzker administration, and it was a year that many political observers have called historic as far as what the governor did in the spring session. He got a lot of his agenda done. He was also successful in the fall veto session on consolidation of pension for downstate fire and police. And we wanted, on the other hand, to kind of get an idea of what you at Wirepoints think as we discuss the health of the state of Illinois. So the governor would say that we're on the road back. What is your attitude about that?
Well, I can see why he might be optimistic. We had really tough years under Governor Rauner and the battles with Mike Madigan. So, the chaos was strong and heavy in those last 4 years. They couldn't reach agreements on anything. We had no budgets, and it felt really, really bad. And so, a guy like Pritzker, he's a likable person. I think he's well intentioned. So, people are smiling in the State House, or they're getting along. They're passing deals. They're doing the things that that they were used to doing in the State House. The problem is that we've got Illinois as a patient is extremely sick, and the kind of reforms or the kind of medicine or the kind of solutions it needs are drastic. They're dramatic. They need to be big. They need to be bold. And if you look at what we got in that first year. We have more tax hikes, which will make it more difficult for people. We passed a record budget, record spending budget. There's more spending to be had. There's the threat of a progressive tax. So if you look at 2019 overall, yes, people got along better. There were more smiles in the State House. But when it comes down to it, and you look at probably the biggest statistic that matters, out-migration, people leaving, it's happening. People are leaving faster than ever before. So we should not be celebrating. We should be very serious about the problems Illinois has and take on the biggest, hardest reforms we can.
What would you say are the biggest challenges that we face financially?
Right. I'd kind of lump them together, right? And they're all tied together. The worst thing going on is that we're losing people, and I guess that's really the symptom, right? We have some of the worst out-migration in the country. We're definitely in the worst three of the states in the country, us and New York. We have home values in Illinois that are among the worst in the nation over the last decade. And people's nest eggs are being hurt. They're actually down when you take into account inflation. We have the highest, if not the highest, the top three highest in the country. So all these things are bad, and it's all showing up in the credit rating. We're one notch away from junk in Illinois. Chicago's already in junk. And you've got people fleeing the state. And those are the two metrics that matter. We're broke and people are leaving. And so unless you really change how things operate in Illinois, nothing's going to change that. And nothing that happened in 2019 changes the trajectory of the steep decline of Illinois.
Let me bring up one graphic that illustrates that the state is losing not only population, but it's also that the loss of those people's spending is hitting the state's tax base. And so we can see on the left there the state population going down, and again, these are graphics that we got from you at Wirepoints, and it's on the right there in purple, the loss of adjusted gross income.
For losing people. It's losing people to other states in a dramatic way. It was another 88,000 in 2018. And the problem is that when people leave, they take their money with them. They take their tax base, their taxes with them, their earnings. And so in 2018, we lost about 5.6 billion of taxable income that would have been here in Illinois to tax and to help fund the state. That money's gone. And that's on top of the 6-point-something billion that was lost the previous year and the years before that. We have been perennially losing our tax base to other states, and that's why we're in trouble.
Do you have a number on what people spend on average every time we lose a family? Are we losing $30,000, $50,000 on average per year per spender?
Yeah, so that we analyzed the IRS numbers and came up that the people that we lose is about $85,000 a taxpayer when they leave.
Per household, I guess. Huh?
Correct. And the taxpayers that come in are bringing in about 66,000. So we're trading off wealthier people for people that have less money. We're losing about almost $19,000 for every person we lose, on top of the fact that we lost 88,000 people net to other states. So we lost a huge amount of our people, and we lost a lot of money in the process.
And then what surprised me, we just have the numbers for 2019 released. Let's take a look at those. And here we see that the headline there, 105,000 people moved out of the state of Illinois. Now, we got some people born, we had some other people move in, so we lost a net outflow of 51,000. But that was shocking to me that 105,000 people moved out. And I think that really kind of underscores that we really do have a problem of losing the population, which keeps going out. And we also, I don't have it available too, but some people say, well, the states like Illinois with cold climates are losing populations to the warmer states. But the fact of the matter is, virtually every state surrounding Illinois has income that is going up while ours is going down.
Yes, if you look at the population of all our surrounding states, if you look at cold weather Michigan, cold weather Minnesota, cold weather Indiana, cold weather Wisconsin, their populations are all growing. There's one state that sticks out like a sore thumb, and that's Illinois. It's shrinking. It and West Virginia are the big shrinkers, and Connecticut too. So there's a big problem. Everybody understands the West Virginia problem, but Connecticut and Illinois are shrinking states, and it's a problem. It's not a cold weather thing. If that were a problem, you'd see Michigan shrinking, but they are growing, and so is Wisconsin.
Let's listen. You have been critical, as we heard here, Wirepoints, of just some of the things the governor's been doing. He was asked a question earlier this year by one of our compatriots, Jeff Berkowitz, at a press conference, and Jeff brought up Wirepoints, and the governor responded. Let's listen to what the governor said, and then let me get your reaction.
So let me start with, organizations like Wirepoints want to diminish what's been accomplished here by saying, well, we have so much more to do. The reality is that so little has been done in the past, and this is a monumental accomplishment after 70 years of people trying. It is evidence that we can tackle the most intractable problems of our state. It is also evidence that we have a lot of challenges and that we've got to go at it every single day, every week, every month, particularly in the area of pensions.
Now, Ted, some people on the conservative side have said the problem with the governor is that he's not offered any reforms, he's not cut any of the programs, he's not tackling the money that we're spending. In fact, the budget that they passed, $40 billion, was a record high budget. And then on top of that, we passed this past spring, about a year ago, a $45 billion capital bill. I think the governor would say we got the budget passed on time, we're no longer running up the list of unpaid bills, and that $45 billion is going to go towards making Illinois more productive, as well as creating some jobs in the short run. Let's wrap all that in. Is the governor taking us on the road to recovery? Would you say that he has scored some points that are valid, or do you still find that what he's doing to be ineffectual as far as putting us on the right path?
Well, I give him credit for bringing some harmony back to Illinois, and to a lot of the what do you want to call it? There's a lot of sour attitudes before, so that's good. However, that harmony is going back to the old ways of go along, get along, where we can pass a $45 billion capital plan, the biggest spending plan ever, when in fact the state is near bankruptcy, or we should say near junk rating. So give him credit for being a guy that's helping people get along. But let me address his point about what he said about Wirepoints. Our critique there was that he did that pension consolidation bill. We said was something that needed to be done, should be done, but it's not a reform. All they've done is taken the money from 650 accounts and lumped them into 2 accounts. We can't jump up and down about that. It doesn't change the problems in Illinois. It just makes it a little bit more efficient. In the end, we're not sure if that's going to have any benefit or not to Illinois and to taxpayers. So it's really hard to say what it does. And it only addressed 4% of Illinois' public pension problem. And so I would argue that, yes, they did something that maybe was hard to get done, and kudos to him for getting everybody around and getting it done. But I would argue this is kind of like, you got a chronically ill patient on the, laying there with serious problems, and we've managed to put a cast on the pinky. We can't jump up and down about that. We've got to address the big issues. And the big issue is the pension problem, the amount of debt we have, and of course the near junk bond rating we have, and all the people leaving. That pension consolidation bill is not going to do anything to keep people here.
The governor has said that he is not going to try to take on the Constitution of Illinois as far as getting rid of the clause, the diminishment clause, which protects pensions. So under the Illinois Constitution, you cannot cut pensions unless you change the Constitution. The governor is trying to change the Constitution by saying we should have a progressive tax. We should be able to tax those high-income people, those who make over $250,000 a year or more. We ought to be able to tax them at a higher rate. So can we, do you support or not support the progressive tax? And can we ever get our hands on the Illinois state budget and fix it financially if we don't do something that would allow us to control the growth of pension costs?
Well, let me say two things. One, the first one is you're 100% right in that, Pritzker, if he wants slaps on the back for doing big things, one of those would be to support a pension amendment or an amendment to the Constitution to reform pensions. That's the big reform. If he wants to say that he's going to do the big things, he should do that. But instead, he has categorically rejected that idea, saying it's too hard to amend the Constitution, while at the same time saying he supports amending the Constitution for a progressive tax. So, he can't have it both ways, and he wants it both ways. So we'll give him huge amounts of applause and support when he finally comes out and supports a pension amendment or an amendment to the Pension Protection Clause. That's number one. Number two, let's talk about that progressive tax for a minute. Think about the problems Illinois has. Number one, it already has either the highest or the top three highest taxes in the nation. A progressive tax will only make that even worse. Number two, Illinoisans are leaving in record numbers. A progressive tax hike, another $3 billion or more, will chase even more people out. And number three, home values are among the worst performing in the country. More taxes will hurt that. I think the only way to say it's a progressive tax will only make everything that's bad about Illinois worse.
Before we close out, are other states doing any better than us? Are their pensions better funded? And why is it that Illinois seems to be only behind, I think, New York or California, as far as, we're right at the top of being the worst in terms of financial crisis? What are the other states doing right we're not doing?
Well, if you look at our neighboring states, they all passed labor reforms in the last decade. Wisconsin, of course, had their big battles in 2011. Michigan went right to work. Indiana, right to work. Indiana, lowered taxes. Kentucky went to a flat tax last year. They went away from a progressive tax and toward a flat tax. They've all been doing different kinds of reforms. In Illinois, we continue to do more of the bad things that we've always done. We've raised the cost of the government. We let our teachers strike on us. In Chicago, 3 consecutive contracts in a row. Rather than rein in the cost, because we can't reform pensions until we change the Constitution, rather than rein in salaries and rein in benefits, we keep doling them out even higher. So we just keep making things worse and worse, and we've done virtually zero to stop the mess we're in, where the other states realize they need to compete. They know they have to compete with the southern states, with the southwestern states. That's where people are moving to, a South Carolina, a Tennessee, even places like Alabama, right, which Illinois, many of the political elite will just dismiss. they're attracting a lot of people in the northern part of Alabama. It's a big boom there. So we need to think competitively. Our legislators need to think about competing and fighting for people, fighting for investment, fighting for that for those tax dollars to come in. We're doing the exact opposite. We're chasing them out.
If you had to pick between having property taxes being high or offsetting that by having higher income taxes and higher sales taxes, and some people have suggested that, you know, the tax swap, because you can control that. Property taxes are not based upon your ability to pay. Would that be a good idea, to swap that out, have higher income taxes, higher sales tax, but bring the property taxes down?
One, Terry, I'm going to say you're giving me a false choice, right? What we need to do is
or I'll throw it out, and you can say, what should we do? Maybe that's the...
No, you know, what we should do is bring them down, right? We have the most union-friendly collective bargaining laws. The unions have all the power, and the ordinary Illinoisan has virtually zero power to negotiate. And so that's why we end up with such high property taxes. The unions can strike, they can demand forced arbitration. Basically, our local governments are powerless. We're not a locally controlled government as much as we like to say we are. So we need to change the collective bargaining laws in a big, big way. We need to move into what I would say is kind of the middle of the pack nationally. And if we did that, I think we'd save a lot of money, and property taxes would come down. But as far as a swap goes, let me say this. We need to bring property taxes way down. And again, that would be through changes in collective bargaining law, so that we don't have to keep paying higher and higher pensions, higher and higher salaries to where we can't afford them. But you know, I warn anybody who thinks a property tax swap would be good. If it's hard enough to control property taxes at the local level, imagine putting all that taxing power now in the hands of the State House in Springfield. If we feel like we have no representation there, if we feel like we have no power to control what the heck Springfield does, okay, you know, if you give them control over billions more, I think it's a really bad idea. So at least at the school board, we have a chance to go see the school board and have a battle about what's going on there. It'll be impossible if we were to put more power in the hands of Springfield over billions and billions more dollars. It's a bad idea.
Ted, before we close out, we, the Illinois Channel, want to continue focusing closely on these financial issues, and you at Wirepoints are a great source for a lot of this data that you closely follow, so we appreciate you giving us your,
thank you.
your insights. Before we close out, I'll tell the viewers that we'll look forward to talking with Ted over the course of the year and focus maybe here and there on some other issues more in depth. This was kind of a good overview as we begin the year, but maybe look at some of these things like the pensions and maybe some reforms and other options. But let me let you have the last word, if anything. Is there anything particularly you're focusing on as you begin 2020?
Well, I think, you know, it's been surprising that the way the census numbers came out and then the Internal Revenue Service numbers came out on the taxes being lost by Illinois and the population being lost by Illinois. It's an ugly reminder that we can't continue to do things the way we do them. We can't continue to think that we can either borrow our way out of this or keep spending more or just change the taxes around. That's not the problem. The real problem is, you know, we've got to change those collective bargaining laws. We've got to reform pensions. And you know, Governor Pritzker and the lawmakers need a lot more pressure from ordinary Illinoisans to say, hey, you know, Governor Pritzker, you can't say that you categorically reject a pension amendment to the pension clause. We've got to put pressure on them. So that's really, I think, the goal is to help Illinoisans learn that that those changes can be had. If not, we're going to continue to lose our population, and then it's a sad story for what's going to happen in Illinois if we continue to lose people the way we are.
There's never enough time to talk about all things I'd love to talk about, so we'll follow up with you again in the future. But Ted Dabrowski, thank you again
Terry.
for following up with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.